Hello, this is Mario Serafero, editor-in-chief at XDA.com, Flashaholic in recovery. I'd like to welcome you to episode 7 of the XDA Nintendo podcast. Our goal is to discuss the latest Nintendo tech news from an enthusiast perspective, and I'm joined here by folk from Reddit and XDA.
Hi, my name is Anthony, and I'm AMA coordinator on the Android subreddit.
Hi, my name's Corey. I'm also on the Android subreddit, and I'm an Android developer.
Daniel from the Android subreddit and an Android enthusiast.
TK Bay from XDA TV.
All right, so going ahead and getting started today with the quick hit news from this week, pulled from the top of the subreddit. YouTube Music comes to Android and iOS this week. We knew that YouTube had announced it a little while ago that it was going to be coming with Red, but it came a few days later. And this app is a fully featured app that's kind of steps on a lot of the toes from Google Play Music. It uses the same subscription system, but allows you to seamlessly sync between video and audio only while it's playing in the background. Some things to keep in mind, though, while using YouTube Music is this is not part of, if you're a T-Mobile subscriber, this won't be part of its music system, the Music Freedom system, so you will be charged data if you're using it, unlike with Google Play Music. But it is a really nice app. Has anybody else had any usage with the new YouTube Music app?
So I installed it right away on all my devices. Sorry, Mario, but and I like the idea of having it separate from YouTube. But I can elaborate a little bit more on that in a few. But Mario, how has it been for you?
I was actually say that I personally do not see much of a benefit to try it. I was going to download it, but then I just sort of something else came up and I just forgot. And I had no reason to because I'm already using YouTube for music because I have the YouTube Red. And I just turn, if I want a music video and I just don't want the screen on, I just turn off the screen. I feel like it's a nice option to have for those people, especially because it comes with a free offer, a trial for YouTube Red, right?
Yeah, 14 days, yeah.
So it's nice that they're doing it and that they're kind of emphasizing the music aspect of YouTube that many feel that they kind of oppose for a long time, but I personally think that YouTube Red is just an all-encompassing service.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's going to take a long time for me to think, I want to go watch a music video. Open up YouTube Music as opposed to the YouTube app, which I'm just so used to opening. So
Right. Yeah, it's all about just getting used to, incorporating these new music apps into our workflow. Speaking of new music apps, there's also a new music app released this week from Apple. So they are finally have support for Apple Music on the Android platform. So you can get that APK installed, and they're coming with, just like in the iOS platform, you can get a free 3-month trial with that. One note, make sure you do check that, because if you don't do anything, it will automatically renew and you'll start having to pay that monthly fee. So if you're just testing it out, make sure to go back and check that. But I think we had some, Anthony, did you say that you were using Apple Music as well?
Well, I used the free trial or whatever on my iPad when it came out after Apple's conference where they unveiled it. I can't even remember the name of it. I was just using it as Beast One because I wasn't eligible for another free trial and I wasn't paying for it since I already have Google Play Music. But the app itself, looks nice. It has some elements of material design, so it's nice that Apple's, at least acknowledging Google's design language for Android. And it works well. Beats One was fine. It's a different take on radio if you like it. But unless you really want Beats One, and unless you have a subscription to Apple Music, or you really want Beats One, it's kind of just like there.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. It is nice to see that, though, that they did have some elements of material design in it. So it's nice to see Apple really making sure they design the app for the platform. And perhaps that's why it was delayed. I'm not too positive on that, but if they're going to design a second application, obviously they're going to focus on the iOS application first. And
a little competition never hurt either.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So that's nice. And there's also some competition in the navigation space. So Google Maps has just come out with an update this past week where they allow you to get offline navigation. So you can, you've always been able to get offline maps if you ahead of time make sure to download the map information. But this is something that's new. You can also say, hey, I want for this area, for this city, I want to be able to get navigation even if I'm offline. And for those of us with, big data plans, maybe it's not that big of an issue, but Google mentions that like 60% of the world still doesn't have internet access. And so there's definitely areas where you will want that. And that's really their main play here.
Yeah. For reference, it used to be the case that you could start navigation. I've done this a couple of times for very short runs. You start navigation on, say, Wi-Fi, and you take the GPS device out, and it follows the navigation. Me and my girlfriend did it for a long trip to a camping site. Yeah, we got lost because at some point it got disconnected and unsynced or whatever, and it was taking us in a completely wrong direction. So, I mean, you still want a data plan for good measure, but for those people that, like you said, that don't have access to internet connection or that want to save on data or whatever reason, this is always a nice option to have. And the fact that you do have offline maps, but not offline navigations, I know that a lot of people, like day-to-day people, not Android enthusiasts, kind of wonder about that. Why is it not letting me navigate? I can see the map.
Yeah, and another thing too is, it's also quicker. A lot of times data packages might be slower in big cities, so having it readily available to be real quick to pull up the most recent maps. And I believe Google is updating them as well if it's saved on your device when you open the app, it'll update if there's any changes or updates to it. And also the other big thing with that update that I noticed, I don't know if you guys had a problem with this, is you no longer are restricted to those really small tiles of space that you can download. You can now download.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can download by country if you want. You can even download by country. Which
that's a really
definitely
nice thing to have.
Yeah.
You can travel throughout the United States and not have to worry about being online. It sounds awesome. So while Google Maps is going offline, Android Wear is going online. Google announced on Wednesday that cellular support was finally coming to Android Wear. So basically what it means is you don't need to have your watch tied to Bluetooth with your phone or Wi-Fi for it to work. Now you can basically take phone calls and even, browse anything without your phone as long as your watch is on a cellular network. The only phone that supports it at the moment is the upcoming LG Watch Urbane 2, which you can get through AT&T and Verizon, according to Google, at least if you're in the US. But, finally, you don't need your watch tied to a phone, I guess. I don't know how this is going to work regarding cellular plans, though, but...
It's nothing new, really. It's new maybe to Android Wear in the sense of how we do it, but we've had many Chinese manufacturers that released watches that have SIM card, memory cards in them to be able to receive and send calls. I think it's a good functionality. Tizen did it a while back, even with I think it was the Gear 2 when Samsung released. So it's something that it definitely is exciting if you want to be outdoors and not have your phone. But the question is, what can you do with it when you're on it other than just data and maybe a couple of calls? Is it really going to be integrated in a better way, giving you access to online stuff?
Yeah, I think it's just a neat feature to have, and we'll kind of see where they take it from there. 3 other quick Google tips that came out. Inbox announced a new smart reply machine learning to give you 3 quick replies to email if you're using Inbox by Google. I don't know if any of you guys use this, but it is actually really intuitive. I was shocked.
Pretty good.
By
Yeah. I tried it out. I was like, wow, that is pretty good. That actually, it had acceptable answers. That was what surprised me. It actually it could pass for an answer. If you're really in a hurry, you could just say, okay, I'll get back to you with this. Okay.
Yeah, it's borderline scary. Yeah. And 2 other things coming up here for us. We have Marshmallow is now on 0.3% of devices. It sounds like a small number of devices, but it is faster than Lollipop was building. Remember, it actually missed like the first month or 2 of reporting. And then finally, Google About Me, aboutme.google.com. If you're interested in seeing what of your personal information that you have with Google is available for people to see publicly, I recommend going to that site, and it allows you to easily toggle who can see what kinds of personal information. And it syncs through your Google Photos account, your Gmail account, your Google Plus account. So there's a lot of neat little features, and I recommend everybody checking that out and just seeing what everybody can see publicly about them.
Yeah, and before we leave off the Marshmallow, I saw a post, I think it was the Android Police, that posted a picture of Marshmallow running on Android Wear.
Yeah, and that's a topic that we'll be getting to in a little bit.
Yeah, that's one of the topics I really want to discuss, because Android Wear is in need of catching up, I guess, with the main operating system.
Right, and that kind of leads us into the hardware news section of this. So we've got a few things that we've seen in hardware. First thing that I want to start off with is the Huawei battery announcement. So they announced that they came up with some new technology that allows them to charge batteries pretty quickly. What they're claiming is that they can charge a battery to 50% in 5 minutes. So now, again, this is probably some sort of test hardware they're doing. I don't know when we'll ever see something like this in a phone, but they're claiming 10 times faster charging performance with this new technology. A little bit of concern on as far as how will this affect the battery life? Will the battery life diminish if you're charging it that quickly? A lot of people think it will, but obviously that's something that Huawei needs to test before they actually incorporate something like this into a phone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty neat feature to begin with, though. What were you saying, TK?
No, I'm just interested in the technology itself. We're having many standards come about. I mean, we had Quick Charge 2.0 with Qualcomm. A lot of devices had those. The Nexus devices have different type of quick charging technology that's not compatible with Qualcomm 2.0 and is not 3.0. And then we have new technology. So batteries are definitely getting the attention now. We're hitting the that proverbial ceiling where the hardware needs to basically have long life. So
batteries or charging ports?
I think it's charging ports, but it's also the capacity of the battery.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's integrated. What I mean is, like, it's the charging. Obviously, the processor needs to support it. The battery needs to be able to take in the extra power, the faster charge. But ultimately, to me, I wish that they would come up with better battery solutions. But we've been hearing about new battery technologies. It seems like every month, perhaps every 2 weeks, for the past 5 years, this paper proves that you can get this amazing energy density, this and this and this, oxygen batteries, this, that, but we never actually see them materialize. Now, Samsung and Graphene, they actually can manufacture it now, and they're probably going to go commercial soon. I'm really excited to see actual battery improvements as much as I like faster charging.
No, definitely.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I agree with you, Mario, but I think this is a nice in-between step. We've kind of plateaued for the most part as far as battery tech goes and how much they can handle. So it's kind of nice to see them making amends while they're making improvements on the technology itself so that we can, get through a day without having to have our phone plugged in for 2 hours or so.
Right. Speaking of hardware and processors and batteries, the HTC X9 was leaked, and people were dazzled by the leaked specifications that promise a Snapdragon 820, big battery, good display, basically, dream phone. Again, like every leak that we wish was true, and like most of the leaks that we wish were true, it turned out not to be true. HTC, reputed leaker of HTC, all things HTC, Lab to Fer, I think that's how you pronounce it. He disproved the claim, saying that this is not going to be a flagship, that the M line is going to get another flagship. It might not be called the M10. So we basically are back at square one, and we know nothing about it. So dreams were crushed again this week, and it's just the proverbial HTC cycle at this point.
Yeah, I think there was some question about those leaks anyways, because there was a full mock-up of the device, and it's still rumored to be 2 or 3 months out, so it was kind of sketchy to begin with. But moving on to another hardware topic, the Gear VR Consumer Edition is finally available for pre-order. We know that they had their Innovator Editions out for the past year or so. It's going to be $99 available for pre-order on Amazon and Best Buy. And it's good with the S6, the S6 Edge, and the S6 Edge Plus, and the Note 5. I think one of the funniest things about it, though, is if you look in the description, it includes a 16 gig micro SD card that includes like a whole bunch of extra features and stuff, but none of the phones can actually handle that SD card. So I thought that was a really
left
funny
over
addition
from the original one. So the original Gear VR, if you had the Note 4, which I have the original Gear VR, came with that 16 gig card to load because you couldn't download a lot of the applications, some of the standard ones, and the media files. So keeping it there tells you they do copy and paste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be funny if it still comes with it, though.
That would be funny. Everybody calling in customer service. Don't have where do I put this?
Yeah. Yeah, the Note 5 getting people complaining because they put the S Pen the wrong way. Well, they might put the micro SD, who knows where,
They try to put it in the USB plug, and they're like, it's not fitting. It's breaking
Or
the
the
card.
SIM card slot.
Oh man,
Yeah.
let's not.
Moving on, BlackBerry.
Ah,
I guess it already came to Android, and now apparently it's coming back with another new device. We've seen leaks of this BlackBerry codename Vienna. It's a codename because they're probably gonna change it for something bad again. But other than that, a beautiful name, beautiful pictures. It's a always on keyboard, as in it's always there. It's not a slider. The device looks great, and I can't wait to see what this device will pack. We don't know much about the specifications or whether it's true or not. The source is reputable, at least as far as BlackBerry things go. So, do you guys want to see another Android BlackBerry phone so soon?
Personally, I'm interested in it. It's been a long time since we've seen anybody or anything but a full touchscreen Android device. The Priv or however you pronounce it has the slider. So seeing a keyboard on the front of a Android device is going to be interesting. And I got to give BlackBerry a lot of kudos for doing something different. Even if it's what we had 4 or 5 years ago, it's cool to see something new in the market. I heard some rumors about specs, possibly a Snapdragon 615. Which is a pretty good processor, or the 617 possibly. So it looks like it'll be a decidedly mid-range phone, but something different to, if it piques your interest.
Mm-hmm.
Feeds to anybody's need for a tactile touch to a keyboard.
Exactly. And also with BlackBerry, they made news this week as well with their DTEC security system, pointing out a lot of outrageous times that modern applications like Facebook, WhatsApp, all of those kind of things are requesting personal permissions, contacts, location, and a whole bunch of weird things. So it's kind of interesting to see BlackBerry coming into the space and then kind of showing what Android applications are doing when we don't even know that they're doing that. I saw, yeah. Well, some of it is just like outrageous, like WhatsApp requesting contacts permission like 6,000 times in 60 hours. It was crazy. There's no reason for any application to request that permission that many times.
It's a paranoid girlfriend.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. And so hopefully with BlackBerry in the market, with all their security, this kind of stuff will be coming to the fore more often, and we'll be able to get some better security on Android because of that. And finally, we have a few other little things that we wanted to discuss here as well as a miscellaneous. We had Cyanogen OS applications are available now for CyanogenMod. So if you wanted their sponsored applications from Boxer and was it Truecaller for their dialer, you can go ahead and install those packages instead of GApps on your CyanogenMod installs. And Microsoft has all but come out and canceled the Project Astoria, or at least placed it on hold. Project Astoria was their system that they were going to be using on Windows 10 and Windows 10 Mobile to port Android applications natively without having to do any kind of code changes. So we don't know whether or not that's a legal issue or application development or developers were pissed off about it, or what the situation was. But that has been removed from the most recent builds of Windows 10, which is kind of interesting.
So on the CyanogenMod part, I just wanted to kind of, before we go too far away from it, I personally like the option to have it there. I find it that even if you do install it, you do still need to have some type of GApps installed, because the initial installation, when you first install either any CM or any OS based on CMs, you have to log into the CM account, set up these things, but you don't always use all of them. So for me, if I'm running a stock look, but I still like the Cyanogen Gallery app, which is a pretty nice one, as well as Audio FX on the Nexus 6P. The equalizer that comes in on it it's not really that detailed, and I find that Audio FX works better, unless we can get Viper for Android on it very soon, which I definitely would enjoy there. It's always a good option if you're a fan of CM app and you want to run a different OS or a different ROM that's not, a CM based ROM. So I like the option. I think they need to have this, and I think they had something similar to this a while back when they first started with the Cyanogen installer that they put on the Play Store. So this is a good follow up to it.
All right, let's get on to some lengthier discussions. One of the bigger news, and Anthony is back. Miss you there, buddy.
Sorry about that.
So we're just transitioning to Android Wear. we're gonna get new hardware. We're gonna see this LG Watch Urbane second edition 2. We haven't really seen much about it. It hasn't been doing much buzz in the media lately. I don't think many of LG's latest flagship products have been. The B10, I haven't seen much actual discussion of it, even though it's a pretty good device and the reviews are pretty good. Other than that, Wear is getting new features. You're going to be able to take Wear on the run and still take calls. You are going to have permission control on Wear. You're going to have speaker support on Wear, which kind of ties in with what we learned over the month, that various Android Wear watches actually have speakers in them that Wear all but supported. So what are your thoughts on this, guys? I personally think that Wear has been kind of like slowing down. Wear slows down, goes faster, slows down, goes faster. It iterates faster than regular Android, but there's such small improvements, and up until this point, I feel like so many of them should have been out of the box launch day of Android Wear features. What are you guys' thoughts on the future of Wear?
Yeah, it seems like it's been very stagnant, and a couple of these things are actually playing catch up to the Apple Watch. Speaker is probably the biggest one. Right. So there's a lot of things that my Android Wear watch, of the Huawei watch, and there's a lot of things that it can do that like my brother's Apple Watch can't do. But one of the things that he uses it for a lot is being able to talk through the phone on it. He can go leave his phone somewhere, be in the other room, and still walk around and talk through his watch, And sure, it's kind of like a speakerphone, but that's one big differentiator right now. And it's nice to see them investigating that. One of the things I think we're missing here is NFC support. We don't see anything brought up on that, and that's another gap that you have to think that's coming soon.
Right, especially with the emphasis on mobile payments. And that paying with your watch would actually make sense. Well, I mean, some people actually do complain that paying with watches is a little awkward, but even then, having the options is nice, because it's something else that it saves you yet another action. Wear is all about it's all about not taking your phone out of your pocket, not getting your phone off the nightstand, off the charger, and this actually does save you more options, especially with cellular connectivity. I would imagine.
Yeah, and you had mentioned earlier that you feel that a lot of these things could have come out of the box with Android Wear. I kind of disagree with that. I think the way Google's been taking Android Wear is a very intelligent way. Instead of throwing everything at it and just saying developer or OEMs, go ahead and have fun with all of this hardware support, Google's been kind of releasing it slowly to make sure that it actually works and is implemented smartly. We saw the Sony Smartwatch 2, I think was the one, that had GPS support in it from the very beginning, but it was all broken until Android was able to, or Google was able to go ahead and put it in the most recent update that it natively supported GPS. So I'm kind of excited that Google is taking more of a stranglehold, for lack of a better term, on Android Wear and making sure that it's stable and going smoothly, instead of just seeing this hardware throw up that we saw in the early days of Android, where they were just throwing things at it.
I think that's a good point, in the sense that it allows the iteration to be globally adopted. Now, the problem with Android on devices is that it can't iterate very fast, because most devices don't actually see the updates, be it because of carriers, be it because of OEMs. It's nice to hear that Marshmallow is doing better than Lollipop was last year, but then again, Marshmallow was not such a huge update as compared to Lollipop, which changed the whole design, changed so many other things. And that kind of ties in with what so many people think, and I wrote an article about this as well, is that Marshmallow is what Lollipop should have been. So in that sense, I think it's a little fair to say that Android Wear now is what Android Wear should have been at the launch day, if it wanted to kind of be ahead of the curve. I think that many of the things they have been added lately are great. I love, for example, the gestures, the wrist gestures. I think a lot of people see that and real day usage, and they think that's really cool. You're scrolling for your watch, but it's not always the most precise thing. But it's really nice when you actually don't have two hands full, because the Apple Watch is all about two-hand operation, and it's all about slow operations. It's gotten a little faster, but it's still pretty slow. And the Android Wear is so much more intuitive. For example, things like that I would like for Android Wear is make it even more one-handed. You can scroll to a notification and say reply, and then it could, you don't have to swipe to the side, type, do this, check, So I think that Wear is getting there, and the ability to iterate faster than actual Android phones is helpful. And that is because Google has such a strong hold on the whole thing. But that kind of takes you to another side of the question, which is, if Google didn't have such a strong hold, and if OEMs could experiment more and more, I believe it was Huawei who wished that they could experiment more with Android Wear, what would it be different? Because we say that it's a good thing, but we can't look at alternate universe where that doesn't happen to measure whether the freedom of developers to do and OEMs to do whatever they want with the operating system is better than the centralized planning that Google is having right now.
I would almost sorry no
go on TK, go on.
For me, and it is definitely a really good point, Mario. When I look at it as far as OEMs, I look at Android Wear and Android as an OS between Marshmallow and Lollipop, and the way we have transitioning on the devices. It's when you give the OEMs more control over the software to change things, you're going to get, everything in the kitchen sink, the Samsung methodology of doing things. And then you only use so little of it, but you are going to get disconnected. I think the reason why many people like the Nexus program and they like Nexus devices is because you can get the update shortly after, maybe even if you're not on the latest device, but you're going to get the latest version of the software and you're going to get that experience, as opposed to having to wait for the OEM, then the carrier. And even then, if you're lucky, if this can actually even get released for your device. So I think the experience with Wear is enjoyable, and it's really getting better and better every time they release it. It's because Google has control over it. And it's the same way we enjoy Nexus. It's the Nexus of the watches, and you know what you're going to get, and you can just customize it to whatever you want. The look is to you, but the software is to Google.
Yeah, and one thing that I think about when I think about Android Wear devices is, had Google released that stranglehold, I don't think we would have that many good devices on the market. When recommending an Android Wear device to someone, you can pretty much take your pick of any of the Android Wear devices that have come out, with kind of the exception of the Gear Live. And they're all going to give you a really good experience. They're not going to give you a horrible experience or a horrible skin or remove features that should have been there. If the feature wasn't built into the hardware, of course, it can't support it. But you're not getting that diversification that you saw with Android, where the LG G4 is a great device and it has a great camera and its battery lasts forever, but the UI kind of sucks, so don't buy it. So you're not having that with Android Wear, and all of the devices are actually pretty good. It just depends on your personal taste and style.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing, because it means that people can actually buy the watch that looks better. People are not used to buying watches for features. People are used to buying watches because they look this way or another way. So in that sense, it makes the purchasing process of the everyday consumer much, much easier. They're not going to get a phone that is overly laggy, that has absolutely abysmal battery life. There's no watches that have absolutely abysmal battery life, and not even the Moto 360. So that's a good point. It makes the process more straightforward, and it allows people to actually wear what they want. And then that's the whole point of the Android Wear campaign, right?
Exactly. And I wanted to speak a little bit more too off of the we've used this phrase a lot, what it should have been, right? There's been some things that it's missing that it should have had, and I think that's to be expected. I mean, you have to realize we just started the second generation of these Android Wear devices. I mean, if you look at where like Android itself was after only 2 years, it's matured quite a bit since then. So I think there's going to be a lot of things that it should have, but it doesn't have. And as we give it some time, that's the biggest thing that we need. And as Daniel was mentioning, it's progressing really well and really unified in a unified manner because of Google. But it just needs a little bit of time until it gets entirely fully baked.
And another thing too, Mario, you were mentioning about using your gestures to do more things and voice control. Part of the Marshmallow update, it also looks to bring more gestures where you can actually go into a notification and go into the first action available for that notification as well with doing gestures. The gestures sound kind of funky, but If they implement it like they did the other gestures, it might actually be kind of useful, especially if you've got a bag or a box in your other hand and you can't touch your device.
As long as you're not, like shaking your wrist like you're crazy.
Yeah.
And holding a drink.
I was going to say there was, we don't have to delve into it because you guys probably haven't seen it, but like shortly before we started the cast, I read a Verge article that was equating the new gestures with Drake's dances from Hotline Bling. So you got to just get an idea of how funky these gestures could be. But
the one
You
gesture
call me
that
on my wear watch.
the one gesture that does look really cool though is you shake your wrist to send it back to the home screen, and it's kind of like when you wear a real watch and you kind of reset it in your hand or on your wrist. It's kind of that same gesture is going to send you back to the home screen. So that's kind of a neat gesture to have there.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, a lot of Android Wear, and there's more news that are bigger this week, though, and that's the Snapdragon 820 finally here for a fiery return to the Qualcomm's original roots, which was what made them great and what made their processor so advanced. At least I think so. It's their custom cores. If you guys, if anyone is not aware, the A10 used off-the-shelf designs from ARM, and they transitioned to Big Little octa-core design, which again was pretty much a standard for what we intended with 64-bit, because they needed 64-bit, but they were not. I guess they were not used to Big Little. They were not used to octa-cores. They were not used to these cores that they had never touched in that way. But now they're returning to a quad-core configuration of custom cores, the Cryo or Cairo. The thing is, there's inconsistencies. You can actually go to their page and they spell it both ways. And they've been doing this for so long because I've been having to report on this processor for a while, and everyone reports it, writes it Cryo or Cairo. Anyway, the custom cores are there. It's a quad-core configuration up to 2.2 gigahertz, I believe. It has a bunch of new features, a new Adreno GPU, and it's promising to pack pretty good performance. Now, other than that, we also had the new Exynos processor. We don't actually know much about the specifications of that one because they didn't do such a huge product reveal. But I want to know if you guys want this processor, if you guys feel like you need a newer processor, and if you believe that Qualcomm can actually redeem itself after they went for the fires and the flames with the Snapdragon 810.
I absolutely think that that Qualcomm can redeem itself. Qualcomm and its custom cores, that's what put them on the map. That's what gave us a lot of the great devices that we had over the years. If we think back, we had some of the old Qualcomm chips, and then we had the Tegra processors, which really kind of sucked. But Qualcomm really pulled away, and they did a really great job until they tried to match the 64-bit architecture that Apple had introduced with the 5S. And that was kind of their stumbling block, was not having these cores ready for the 810 and, all the problems that we saw. So I'm all ready to hop back on the Snapdragon bandwagon. I still have an 805 in my Nexus 6, and aside from the NAND chip, it's still a really, really good processor and a really good GPU. And, that's what Snapdragon's been doing for years, is just making good, long time running GPUs and CPUs.
Yep, and you say long time running, and that's no kidding. Now, why? I would pick Snapdragon 820 S7 or Note 6 over an Exynos one, even if it has worse performance, because I know that it'll just get better support than what Exynos has. I really like the processor in the Note 5. I'm enjoying the latest update, which dramatically improved standby battery. It's on those levels now, like those, like actual marshmallow dose, but on lollipop levels. I love it. But at the same time, I wish I could do more. I wish I could play with AOSP ROMs and dual booting and a lot of things that I just can't use on the Note 5 right now, and I likely won't use during the lifespan of the device, at least in my house.
I think it's been a plague. It's been a plague that the Exynos processors have always had support and community support on it. Qualcomm is just
not always. After the super break kind of happened, but yeah. Lately, it's just bad. It takes so long for Exynos devices, if they get it, to get AOSP ROMs. My Note 3 is my girlfriend's now, technically, is running CyanogenMod. It works, but it's not the most stable thing. The battery life is not great. It's clearly, something like a ragtag hacked together kind of AOSP.
Yeah, I think that's running the. Sorry, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think I just going back to the Qualcomm and Exynos. I mean, whether or not I'm gonna get a phone that has those processors in it, I just want to see them and hope that they work out, because then that could lead to better processors from other companies that are making mobile processors that people don't really know about, but think about, like Nvidia or Intel. People constantly praise the Intel Atom processor and the Zenfone 2 for giving great performance. Nvidia's X1 chip that's going to be in the Pixel C. According to Mario, it's a beast. I haven't actually used a device on it, but so I'm hoping that Qualcomm getting their game back and Exynos keep bringing it up will lead to these other companies also doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing as well, Corey, go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to mention too, Mario actually asked a question a little bit earlier. Do we feel like we need a new processor? And I think my answer to that is absolutely yes. The big benefit I see is we've got new specs for quick charging. So the new Snapdragon 820 is going to have that quick charge 3.0 spec, which they claim 38% faster charging. So
not Huawei levels, but
no, not quite. But once we see that in a Huawei phone, I think then we can start talking about it. So
yeah, imagine if the A10 charged that fast. I don't think it could handle it.
No. But that's like right there. That's a real world benefit that I'm going to see. And we've talked about how our batteries don't have enough capacity in them to be able to always last one day. If I can plug it in, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's very fast. 2.0 is already fast. And this
I was going to say the Huawei is like 48% in 5 minutes, something like that. That's insane.
Yeah, like this is not on that 48. Level. But
I hope that the processor is actually more efficient in terms of battery. Now, I was looking at their product page, and they talk about how it's more efficient than previous versions, but being more power efficient than the Snapdragon 810 is not necessarily quite the compliment it sounds on at first glance, because you consider that the Snapdragon 810 devices, they have a very sick trend, and that's the fact that they typically have worse battery life than their predecessors, despite this newer phones having more efficient components everywhere else, bigger batteries. It happens with the Xperia phones. It happens with the OnePlus 2. Happened with the M9. It just keeps happening. So I really hope that they improve battery efficiency on that chipset, because after playing with chipsets and devices, that the actual hardware feels efficient. Because you look, it feels efficient in real world usage, but it also feels efficient when you dig a little bit deeper and you look at, for example, the frequency, the average frequency during certain tasks. You see that the processor doesn't wake up nearly as much. The processor does not need to work as hard for certain tasks. It doesn't throttle, and the performance is just great. The battery life is great. I really like you mentioned, the Zenfone 2, very, very nice processor, and I was pleasantly surprised by Intel's processor. And the Exynos, the 808 that I actually have right here in the Nexus 5, it doesn't feel that way either. It's definitely not a bad chip, but it doesn't feel nearly as good as I expected it to be. I think part of it is the encryption in the Nexus 5 and Nexus 5X. The GPU performance is just not there for me. You actually look at the LGB10, and in many benchmarks it scores less than the G4, but this one has more RAM. So it's definitely the latest chipsets from Qualcomm just didn't feel efficient to me, and I think that's part of the reason why we see such bad battery life on so many of those D810 devices that are not properly tamed, at least. So that's a big focus to me, is just how actually efficient. I don't care about the peak performance, because I barely ever use peak performance. I don't need faster processors in that sense. I just need it to take me through the day without headaches and actually last.
Yeah,
another thing.
I was gonna say I really think Qualcomm got too involved in the spec war, and I'm glad that they're going back to what made them the company that they are now.
Yeah, and going back to
the custom cores.
Yeah, like you were saying about the Exynos and the Snapdragon processor, Mario, and the Galaxy S7. A lot of people, and I don't know, Corey, if you had the Galaxy S6 at launch, but the GSM models here in the US had a huge problem with cell standby, where it would just completely drain your battery through a day, and you could hardly get through a day because of it. And that was no doubt due to Samsung having to match their Exynos processor with a Qualcomm radio. As opposed to the CDMAs, I believe they had Shannon radios in them, which is what Exynos typically uses. So something I'm going to really enjoy is being able to have a really good CPU and GPU combined with a really good modem. And that's something that Qualcomm knows how to do. They know their modems. They know their business there, and we should be able to see
it's a big part of the business.
Yeah, that the Galaxy S7 should be a really good contender because they'll take everything they learned from the Galaxy S6 and not have the things that impeded them with the Exynos processor in the Galaxy S6 and make the Galaxy S7 a really good device.
Yeah, Exynos has been improving on the modem side for a while. I have the Note 3, which it worked in my country in Argentina. Anywhere else, it just doesn't really work properly. And that's the thing, that the Qualcomm chipsets, they have much better support. The Exynos devices are much more localized in terms of the modem support for the different bands and different countries and different networks. So that's also a very good point. Again, if they can keep the heat down, I mean, if the processor is named Cryo means cold, so you kind of gotta live up to the name. If they can keep the heat down and they can get the peak performance that they promise, the improvements that they promise, and they can also keep a good average performance, and the processor is efficient, knows when to wake up. Now, this is my favorite part about this processor, and it doesn't have to do with the peak performance. It doesn't have to do with the battery efficiency. It's the fact that they're putting a lot of attention on actual heterogeneous, excuse my English, multiprocessing. That means distributing the load across different cores, and also their hexagon DSP and a bunch of other places that it just makes sense. Now, one of the problems that I feel that the A10 had is that it switched to Big Little. Big Little is all about multiprocessing, and the A10 and that one, Exynos, were the ones that actually managed to use all cores and not just one cluster at a time. Because that was a big problem with, for example, the old Big Little Exynos. People wanted the phones to use all cores at once, but Samsung was kind of like, it's not ready yet, dude. It's going to burn your device. So now that they're putting so much effort into actually efficiently distributing their tasks and the load and the processor, I think it was called Symphony Manager. That is what I'm really excited about, because that's going to lead to further efficiency. The stuff is going to go where it needs to go, and it's going to be churned out faster that way.
And one other thing as well that the Qualcomm 820 is going to be bringing that we haven't mentioned yet is the new Sense ID fingerprint sensor. Oh, yeah. And it's been shown to work through aluminum and glass, so we may actually see fingerprint sensors hidden behind front screens, completely hidden fingerprint sensors on devices. And I think that's something that'll be really, really cool with the 820, and I really hope that it's something that does take off and is as good as they're demonstrating.
Yeah, they had it in the video. I saw it in the preview when they started showing it on Twitter. I was like, wow, that's nice. Some nice features.
Yeah. That's the bottom line is Snapdragon 800 chipsets and Snapdragon chipsets in general. They come with all these features that OEMs might not necessarily use, but the ones that do use them do see benefits from them. Now, for example, the example I like to bring up is the 800 series, the 801, the 805. They also bring very good features for all sorts of things, but ultimately, do OEMs need them? Because at the end of the day, it might have all these improvements in rendering and a picture, improving the camera quality, but Samsung does just a fine job, actually the best job as far as software processing of images goes, on their Exynos chipset. And they invested millions of dollars on it. Obviously, when Samsung has so much money, they can just throw it, just do whatever you want, and wonder happens. It's just Samsung magic. Ultimately, all those features, I think they circumvent the processor. I personally don't. It's not stuff that you realize as easily as a benchmark that tells you the processor speed or the real day-to-day of battery life. You can't really see the effect that it's having,
It's something that we need to keep a look at, especially with the new next generation, actually, because as far as this year, I think we're pretty much done with the 810. I think this is at the tail end of what we're going to see from that processor anyways, especially with the announcement of the 820. So a lot of exciting new devices to look for, as you guys said. Looks like we may be looking for a new HTC within the next few months, and definitely the new Samsung S7, which should be a really good improvement on the S6, as Anthony was saying.
I was gonna say, TK, you don't think the OnePlus X2 is gonna have an 810?
I wouldn't be surprised. Yes, I think if they go track wise, right? You don't go last year. You go the worst thing that happened last year.
Like, so for example, like the X1 had the same processor as the 1, so the X2 had the same processor as the 2.
As the 2, and they'll basically, that's how they clean their stock, right? They bought so much of the 810, they got to put it out somewhere.
So really not delivering them to the people.
No, and then there's also I read some reports on the X1 on the OnePlus X that the band support on it doesn't support band 12 on T-Mobile. It doesn't support the most common AT&T LTE band. Which is a really bad. A lot of people should be aware of it when they're thinking of it's a 250 device. Don't expect don't expect
pretty
everything.
Much useless in the United States, from what I've seen.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not marketed towards that market. I think the OnePlus 2 is what they want us here. The OnePlus X, I think, is mostly a European. You could see they launched it, made it available. The announcement was done in Europe. They didn't even bring it to the Big Android. They didn't even go to the Big Android barbecue, which was a week before. So that tells you,
I wanted to try that. Anyway,
definitely, that was a lot of fun.
Anyway, we'll see. So that's what we can say right now. We'll see. We're only a few months away until we start seeing devices with the Snapdragon 820. We already know that many of the flagships are looking to get it. That even we've seen leaked benchmarks of the Xiaomi phone with them. I don't particularly trust them at this point. But if they're true, they're pretty promising, especially because they show very, very good multi-core scores, which means that the multi-processing is working, so they're doing that.
Yeah.
And
definitely, and we'll see how it happens at CES if somebody announces a device like last year with the G Flex 2. I think LG was the only one that did.
Yeah, that was the only phone announced at CES.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting topic, and I hope it's going to be a hot topic for all the good reasons this time. Either way, I think that's all for today. We talked a lot about many little news. We talked about Android Wear, Marshmallow. We talked about new BlackBerry phones. I think it's been a solid discussion. Pretty good points brought up and discussed and debated. I'm Mario Serafero, editor-in-chief at XDA. You can find me on xdadevelopers.com. Usually I write a couple times a week. And if not, I'm just editing everyone else behind the features. And you can also find me on Twitter. You can find me on Reddit with the handle Takyangan.
I'm Anthony Arzon, again, AMA coordinator on the Android subreddit. You can find me on Reddit and on Twitter at my handle, Anthony VRJs.
And I'm Corey Fiak. You can find my apps on Google Play at Codisms, and I also have a Twitter, CodismsDev. And if you go there, you see a lot of reactions off of the recent T-Mobile announcement.
And I'm
Don't
Daniel
get me
Marchena.
started on that. That's sorry.
Me and Corey have been talking about that all week. But I'm Daniel Marchena. You can find me on Twitter and most other social networks, Ultimax98, and at YouTube at Daniel Marchena.
And I'm TK Bay. You can find me on XDA TV as well as on my channel on YouTube, but mostly on Twitter at TKDSL8655. You guys have a good week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.